Sundaland, the continent that drowns slowly. It is a curious fact that some lands go to sleep in water rather than in fire. They retire, very politely, beneath long, patient tides, and leave only the faintest of signatures upon the shore. We begin with that soft curiosity, spoken as if from a shelf of old books, because it steadies us and offers a gentle premise for the slow account to follow. We settle beside a vanished beach now worn thin by memory. Imagine the air warm and humid against our faces, the last light of day pooling in shallow lagoons, and the sound of water as a kind of soft punctuation. The tide is low and close, making a sort of conversation with the sand, a low, regular answering that we can feel in the chest if we listen. From the west comes a long, resonant bell, like the hull of an old ship acknowledging us from far off. And beneath our feet there is an undercurrent of hush, something like silk rubbed very slowly. We say the name once and gently, Sundaland. It is the name our maps do not fully hold, the name of a broad shelf of earth that, in other seasons of the world, was land and not sea. To be clear, and briefly scholarly, this is not an assertion of ceremony, but of method. The idea comes from many patient observations. Old river cuts now beneath water, pollen trapped in mud that speaks of forests, tools that find themselves in unexpected places. Yet for now we will let these facts be like footprints on a long sandbar, visible, soft, and invited into story rather than rushed into verdict. Listen with us to small things, the lapping that sounds like a slow inhale and exhale, the long, distant murmur of something metallic learning to remember its tone. We allow the soundscape to guide our breathing. If you would, match your breath to the tide with us, breathing in as the water whispers in, and out as it sighs away. There is warmth in this dusk, faint salt on the skin, the suggestion of wet leaves crushed underfoot, a small, pebbled heat of sand that still remembers the day. Imagine the ground here as broad and plain once, river lines braided across it, hunting paths and hearths and small children's games. We let our minds walk those soft contours without urgency. The teller in us does not demand answers, only attention. The voice we share is a companion voice, measured, intimate, and slow, so that even when we touch the worn edges of fact, the room between us is always tender and untroubled. We notice the tactile. The sand gives under our toes in a slow, obliging way. The grasses by the shore murmur, and then all is very quiet. The long inhalation of the sea makes the world feel slightly magnified and softened. Objects lose their hard edges and become shapes that could be tucked away. We keep our cadence low and even, allowing phrases to float and lengthen, and we sprinkle pauses that let the listener's thoughts smooth out, like cloth under a palm. Scholarly asides arrive like small shells at the edge of speech, the maps that say nothing, the cores that whisper age, the sonar lines that draw faint ridges where streets might once have been. We state these tools softly, sonar, sediment, stone, so that their names are ornaments rather than commands. We do not insist on certainty. Instead, we hold an attitude of pleasant, deliberate curiosity, and this steadies the room between heartbeats. The hypotheses we touch will be gentle. The discoveries we name will be offered as small, luminous objects placed in the palm. Remain with us now in the hush between two breaths. The evening is slowing to a long, comfortable cool, and the world beneath us is beginning its quiet work. We will move, little by little, deeper into this history, inch by inch, tide by tide, so that sleep finds us en route rather than at some abrupt end. Let the tide be our metronome, and our breathing keep time to it. We press our palms, imagining the cool clay beneath, and the sound of a single reed stirring like a small bell. There is a slow assurance in such details, an assurance that things can be known softly, and that knowing them need not disturb the night's calm. So we will walk, not hurried, allowing each image a place to rest in our minds, until both story and body are ready to loosen their grip and settle. Scholarly framing: the patient science of a drowned shelf. It is perhaps fitting to approach this matter as one approaches a delicate clockwork, slowly, with hands unclenched, noting each hinge. We speak in measured sentences because the land we are tracing unfolded its change across centuries and then more centuries. Beneath our voice there is always a subtle metronome. Imagine the soft tick of sediment settling in a long core, layer by patient layer. Occasionally a faint sonar ping answers us from the deep, a bright, curious note that does not demand but invites. These are the textures of the field, strata rendered as low, round tones, cores read like sentences, maps that hum with contour lines as if they were stories. How did the sea come to cover that broad shelf we now call Sundaland? The short, scholarly answer is the combination of two slow partners, ice and water. In the last glacial maximum, much of the world's water lay locked in ice, and global sea level was considerably lower. Then, with gradual warmth, meltwater returned to the oceans. The edges of continents that had been plain became shore. We do not say this with theatricalism, but as one might report a tide's schedule, patient, rhythmic, inevitable. We sketch a timeline softly, an age measured not in years alone, but in handspans of climate, in the slow migration of plant communities. Imagine the sea rising over centuries, inch by inch, century by century, so that fields became marshes and marshes folded into shallow bay, and the people who lived there adjusted their nets, their hearths, their songs. We might suppose a thread of occupations along river mouths that shortened as the coastline receded. We might imagine salt in pots, changing the recipes a family kept. We might picture children learning to measure the tide by the stone they left anchored on the shore. Our methods are modest and patient. Sonar maps trace the bathymetry, revealing sinuous lines, submerged river valleys, that read like the ghost arteries of a landscape. Sediment cores, brought up with quiet ceremony, contain pollen and microfossils, a library of transitions where terrestrial pollen yields at a certain depth to marine microfossils, and in that thin margin the narrative shifts. Archaeologists find stone tools and hearths stranded in contexts that suggest older shorelines. Geology adds its own punctuation, tectonic nudges that tilt a plain or hold it steady, local subsidence that deepens an inlet, and the slow, patient veneer of change that no single event entirely explains. We will sometimes pause to make a scholar's aside. The data are fragments and careful interpolation. There are debates about rate and pause and pulse, when melt spiked, when shorelines hung for generations. We say this in passing because it is important to know that science is not a verdict, but a conversation. We are fellow readers of a palimpsest, and every core adds a line to the stanza, every new sonar image a faint sketch, and every recovered flake of flint a human punctuation mark. Let us place 4 small scenes as soundscapes that anchor the science in human habit. First, the harbor, where boats lie low and nets are mended. You can hear the soft, regular rubbing of rope, the hollow thump of a hull at mooring, and the murmur of voices curved into evening. Second, an oak avenue that might have run behind a coastal village, roots deep and leaves whispering, the path packed by many feet and the occasional clatter of a child's toy. Third, a hearth where coals huff and the scent of roasted tuber gives the night its rounded warmth. Pots clink, and someone hums a measure that keeps time with the chores. Fourth, the tidal plain itself, mud stretching like a slow clock, the salt smell rising in ribbons, and the distant cry of a bird you cannot quite name. We bring the body into the frame occasionally to keep our knowledge embodied. Feel the cool clay beneath our toes as we step into a marsh, and notice how our breathing slows when we listen to the distant, mechanical note of a research vessel. how curiosity and physical stillness are congenial. Place your hands on your knees if you like, and let the slow cadence of our speech guide your shoulders to loosen. These are small practices of attention that keep the intellect and the body in company. There are questions left as gentle echoes. Which rhythms of rising were steady, and which came as pulses? Did communities move inland in careful steps, or in swift migrations when a river mouth gave way? Were there moments of calm in which people adapted easily, and moments of sudden rearrangement? These are the seams where conjecture and evidence meet. They are also the places where our imagination can rest, because uncertainty here is not a cliff but a softening of focus. We close this frame with a small, calming ritual. Imagine the sonar ping like a pebble dropped into wide water, brief, bright, and then fading into a wide, slow hum. The hum is the testimony of time. The pebble is our present curiosity. We continue, not to resolve, but to attend, and in attending we find a restful knowing that steadies the evening. Primary mystery unfolding, the continent that drowned slowly. We will trace an imagined map with sound and careful patience, sliding from a bright shoreline into the long, deep mouth of a river that now remembers only the slow pressure of sea. Hear this as a movement, a sliding pan from sand, warm and granulated, to silt, cool and yielding, until the world beneath us begins to sing in a minor, watery key. There is a hush where human laughter once rose, replaced by a distant, underwater hum. Imagine reeds that once marked a riverbank bending under tides that grew imperceptibly larger across generations. We can feel the mud underfoot in our mind, its cool give, the faint smear on our toes. And in that sensation, the groundless fact of loss is held gently, as though placed on a cloth. We speak not to alarm, but to name. The naming itself is a small, consoling act. At the heart of the mystery are several patient possibilities, each plausible and each partial. One theory is the patient return, an orderly, long hand of melt and change where coastlines retracted and communities adapted, moving house by house and refrain by refrain. Inch by inch, century by century, the shore receded and people learned new ways to lay their nets and build on stilts. And in this account the landscape yields slowly like folded fabric. Another theory posits a more sudden opening, a new inlet cleaving a bay and altering tidal behavior, so that a familiar shoreline rearranged itself in a few decisive storms. A third possibility is social reorganization, families and communities making cumulative choices, shifting trade routes, altering seasonal habits, so that what looks like a drowning is also partly a human rearrangement. We alternate between intimate losses and broad conjecture because both are true and neither is sufficient alone. Picture two small scenes and let them anchor the larger hypotheses. First, a single hearth beside a river. A mother arranges 3 stones to hold a pot. The flame tickles a leather strap, and the child practices a counting rhyme that keeps cadence with the river's noise. The hearth's ash is the most ordinary of things until we find it in a coarse sample far offshore and realize how the ordinary maps onto the extraordinary. Second, a harbor mouth where boats are retied and planks get new repairs. The scraping of rope and the hollow thump of a keel are routine sounds, until later, when those sounds are read as markers of a coastline that has shifted. The evidence that undergirds such stories is a composed and patient chorus. Bathymetric maps reveal the ghost arteries of drowned river systems, sinuous depressions that read like veins across the shelf. Sediment cores deliver a layered book, terrestrial pollen giving way to marine microfossils at particular depths, an acoustic turning of pages that scientists listen to as a kind of long, low narrative. Underwater terraces suggest former shorelines. Stone tools and hearth-midden fragments, when found in context, provide human punctuation. Each line of data is modest. Together they assemble a plausible shape of the past. And here, In the mid-current of our consideration, we lay down a more mythic, tangible form, the sunken ziggurat. Imagine, with all the restraint of a scholar and the tenderness of a dreamer, a stepped structure half swallowed by marine bloom. It may not have been a ziggurat in the strict temple sense. Perhaps it was a communal mound, a raised platform for assembly, or a burial terrace. For our purposes, it functions as a symbol, a built center that gathers memory. Approaching it is like approaching a very old story, one that is partly architectural and partly mnemonic. We enter the inner chamber in imagination. The water here has settled into a muted hush, and sounds are rounded and overtoned. The scrape of our gloves becomes a small percussion, and a distant current plays a low, continuous note. In the chamber, the light is a slow, green dusk, and particles drift like slow, suspended snow. We find within the chamber a single object that resists the ocean's flattening, a small carved pendant, worn smooth at the edges, with the faint thumb mark of a maker pressed into its clay. The pendant refracts meaning only subtly. Its shape is plain, its glaze long gone, but the indentation of a thumb reads across millennia like a signature. Is an intimacy that anchors the imagination. Theory and touch remain entwined. Was the ziggurat submerged during a steady climatic shift, a patient drowning that left ceremonial architecture to soften into reef? Or did the ziggurat meet water sooner, caught in an inlet's sudden taking, so that courses of ritual were interrupted and left to become islands of coral? Or yet did people themselves gradually abandon such communal foci as the social map rearranged, carrying with them what mattered and leaving other forms to dissolution? Each option is plausible, each is partial. We do not seek to crown one story as sovereign. Rather, we fold them together, geology, archaeology, and the quiet record of human habit, so that the picture is plural and gentle. Attend to the acoustic textures that accompany these possibilities. When a channel deepens, the river's tone compresses and sharpens. When a shore softens into estuary, the birds change their call and fish move to new depths. Imagine the metallic note of a research instrument marking time as it takes a sample, a faint, modern punctuation in a very old sentence. These small sounds make the data feel near and tactile rather than abstract. They let science remain a conversation rather than a proclamation. We return, briefly, to intimate detail to keep the scene human. Picture an elder folding up a woven mat and walking inland with a small bundle. Their feet press the mud and leave a patterned track that, in a later age, will be read by machines and given a coordinate. Picture a child losing a carved toy to a sudden tide and the long hush that follows. Such personal losses are quiet and sharp, and they remind us that history is composed of many such small, unrecorded absences. Bring your body back into attention here. Let your shoulders unfurl a fraction. Feel a small coolness at the nape of the neck, and notice how the rhythm of our words slows your heart and even, deliberate beat. These are the small alignments we ask you to make, so that the mind may follow the gentle arcs of speculation without clenching. Consider also the subtle marks that only time and human craft can leave. Post holes suggested by faint sonar ridges, a worn stone edge from fingers rather than waves, the staggered footprint of a path now read from an angle of depth. One might suppose these are the most tender of traces, the small, ordinary things that insist on having been loved. We might ask, in that quiet scholar's way, which relic we hope for more, the pendant pressed with a thumb mark or the ghost of a counting rhyme? These rhetorical questions we place between us as a ritual, questions that do not demand answer, but that allow us to rest with ambiguity. Human decisions matter. Sometimes communities moving their hearths, altering trade, learning new fish runs. Sometimes they were nudged by a single, sharp change. The sea, too, acts as a slow archivist, carrying and breaking and sometimes preserving. To that idea as if it were a secret offered close to the ear. The uncertainty here is not a void but a companionable space, wide enough for many stories. Let it settle. Let the open question be the soft thing that anchors our attention, and let the tide of thought slow with our breathing. Scholarly framing, the patient science of a drowned shelf. We begin this modern passage as one might begin to follow a thin thread back to its knot, listening to the small impediments that make otherwise ordinary days become something noticed. There is a particular modestness to discovery here. Often it is not a grand announcement, but a net snagged on an unexpected lump, a fisherman's careful tug that reveals the first hint of something that does not belong to the open sea. Picture, if you will, a small wooden boat rocking with subdued grace, its engine a low, reliable hum, and the net taking a soft, obstinate catch. The rope grinds a little on the drum, a metallic whisper, ratchet, tilt. The sound is domestic and practical. A hand, calloused and sure, pulls up something that is not fish, a lump of clay encrusted with weed, a fragment that at first looks like ordinary stone. The immediate astonishment is tactile, the net's fabric rubbing against the object's edge, the slight give when fingers test for hollowness, small details that later become the basis for patient curiosity. That first photograph is often the portal. A crude phone camera, hands with salt crusting the fingernails, a grainy close-up of a shard, or a small carved object lying weakly luminous among wet ropes. Flat light, a thumbprint at the edge. The shutter's soft click is a small, modern punctuation, and that image, sent through a chain of messages, becomes the seed for more deliberate attention. We hear the faint digital chirp as the photo travels, then the clarifying, higher-pitched call of someone on the shore saying, "Send it here." A human concurrence that turns a private snag into a communal question. A sonar blip then appears like a deliberate, scientific blink. A survey vessel pings the water with an ordered patience, and the echo returns as a small, bright note. Sonar is itself a kind of modern listening, a way to draw the dark in outline and let those outlines suggest a story. The operator hears a shape differ from the expected smoothness, a terrace where a terrace should not be, a line that answers like a street to the instrument's steady beat. The sonar room is filled with small, mechanical breathings, the rhythmic ping, the soft scroll of a chart plotter, the muted murmur of a technician describing what the screen suggests. In such rooms, hypotheses accrete like barnacles, small, incremental, evidence-based. Then the divers reach. Perhaps our most tender modern sound is the hiss of a regulator and the soft creak of neoprene as a diver slips into cool water, the training breath, the clearing of mask, the small exhale that forms bubbles like beads. We must slow here and feel it. The wrist learns the temperature of the current, a cool press at the pulse. The hand navigates with gloved delicacy down a vertical line until a shadowed shape resolves into ordered stones. In some cases, the diver moves within a built space, an inner terrace, a stepped corner that answers like a memory, and the gloved fingertips translate stone into story through touch, an edge smoothed by human hands, a groove that suggests repetition, a hole that once held a post. There is tactile astonishment in such reaching. Imagine closing your fingers around an object smoothed by craft, feeling the slight warmth that lingers in its center where hands once held it. The sensation is immediate and intimate. Weight, texture, the faint give of silt. When the diver withdraws and brings the object into the light of a boat's deck, the sequence of contemporary mechanical sounds, the winch's long, obedient groan, the damp slap of water against timber, a camera's hushed shudder, becomes a modern liturgy. One watches as the item is laid upon wet canvas, water beads in the grooves, and then runs away in tiny, insistently bright channels. The diver may stand for a moment with it cupped in both hands, a private astonishment in a public, practical frame. A tender private discovery follows, often quieter than the moving parts of research. Imagine a diver lowering into a shadowed chamber, an inner terrace within the ziggurat we have imagined, fingers tracing sediment as if reading a page in a book. There is a moment when gloved hands part a curtain of algae and reveal a single, small object. A child's play token or a carved peg, domestic and plainly formed, its function ordinary and its survival a private astonishment. The diver lifts it close, the beam of their torch laying gold across wet clay, and for a second there is only the muffled sound of respiration and the bead of light revealing a thumb mark or the printed pattern of a maker. Is a human signature that travels better than any map. Back on shore and in the lab, the acoustic palette shifts to quieter, intimate machines. The software of a centrifuge, the delicate tick of a scale, the thin breath of a fume hood. A conservator's gloved fingers move with care. Paper slides across a stainless table with an almost inaudible hiss. Photographs are taken, catalog numbers whispered, and small notes are made in a hand trained to be unhurried. The lab's hum is not triumphal. It is a domestic, exacting music, the sound of work done with reverence. Chemical assays are read out in low voices. Spectral lines are pointed to with soft taps on glass. A curve on a monitor translates the past into a plausible series of changes. In the conservator's room, there is a small, private ceremony of attention. The object rests on foam, and the conservator leans close, breath soft against the glass of a microscope. A tiny brush passes, a cheek of incrustation loosens with a whisper, and the click of an adjustment sounds like careful punctuation. Tests hum in low tones. A monitor's quiet light maps a curve that will be read aloud in gentle voices. It is work that resembles prayer in its patience. And when these small procedures occur, we feel the distance between us and ancient hands' contract. Interdisciplinary conversation follows. An anthropologist recounts an oral fragment, while a geochemist traces a curve on a screen, and their words overlap like two instruments finding harmony. The sounds, the page turn, the soft scuff of shoes on linoleum, the distant hiss of a kettle, are domestic and grounding. These are the ordinary noises of thoughtful work, and they remind us that discovery is assembled by many small attentions rather than by a single loud revelation. Public walks follow quietly in some places. A community will place a framed image in a municipal hall, and people will move past it in ordinary ways, shopping bags shifting, children tugging at sleeves, elders pausing to look a moment longer. A plaque along a newly marked coastal trail receives quiet fingers tracing etched words. People stroll with the cadence of small rituals. The low, staccato pattern of footsteps mixes with the sea wind as if in counterpoint, and sometimes someone will stand a little longer at a marker, tracing a name or a date with a fingertip and remembering a different shoreline. These modest public rituals draw the past into ordinary life. Throughout these sequences, our narration is punctuated by small scholarly reflections. Sonar traces are interpreted cautiously. A terrace may be natural, or it may be a remnant shaped by people. Conservators remind us that objects tell partial stories. Context, where an object is found, its association with other finds, carries great weight. We are careful in our declarations because care itself is part of the respectful listening that this work demands. Science here is not the overturning of romance, but its companion, measured instruments and soft aesthetic attention walking together. Bring your body right now into soft attendance. Let your hands rest upon your lap. Feel the slow release of your shoulders, and place a gentle attention on the rhythm of your breath. Notice how the narrative breath of machines, winches, pings, the hush of a lab, translates into a meditative cadence for us, a mechanical lullaby that steadies curiosity into a calm, thoughtful waiting. There is also the municipal and social texture to consider. Once a find is known, there are meetings, people gather with tea, voices low, maps are unfolded on kitchen tables, old myths consulted as if for instruction, and local fishermen tell versions of events rich in small particulars. The bureaucratic clatter of permissions, the postal hum of correspondence, the soft footfall of visitors at an exhibit. These are surprisingly comforting noises, ordinary processes that shape how we remember and keep. A certain acoustic irony is present in modern discovery. The very new sounds that reveal the ancient are themselves recent. Diesel purrs, digital chirps, camera shutters. Yet they mix with far older textures. The scrape of a blade clearing silt, the whisper of cloth around an object, the human chuckle at a find. This blending of temporal sounds is itself consoling. History and modernity in soft duet, where new machines listen for old voices. We return, briefly, to the ziggurat motif. When teams map a stepped terrace, when a sonar image renders rhythm like a staircase beneath waves, the architecture invites imagination. But the ziggurat we care for most is not a towering spectacle. It is a place of ordinary gestures, a storage platform, a child's play ledge, a communal step where bread may once have been exchanged. The modern moment of discovery, net snag, photo, ping, diver's reach, lab table, public walk, makes a complete, modest cycle. The past touched, recorded, conserved, and then folded into the town's memory. We let these sequences play out without hurry. There is no public drumroll here. There is only the slow accumulation of attention and care. The world of research is practical and patient, and the sounds of that work are gentle markers for our own breathing and settling. We progress with our hands soft and our curiosity steady, keeping the intimate discoveries close to the chest rather than parading them. Allow the images to fold inward now. A net's soft snag, a thumbed photograph, a sonar's gentle pulse, a diver's careful hand, the lab's hum, a community's quiet walk past a new frame. Each moment has its own small music. Together they make a low, consoling chorus. As you let your own breath find a comfortable rhythm, let the modern sounds recede into a calm hum and carry you a little further into the long patience of the sea. Soft tangents and sleep-inducing digressions, oceanic daydreams. We let ourselves drift now into smaller, unanchored images, the sort of daydreams that a long tide invites when the mind is allowed to wander without purpose. Imagine a tidal pool, a shallow bowl of sea caught among rocks, where color and motion are concentric and unhurried. We peer into that micro-world and find in its slow eddies a whole catalog of gentle activity. Anemones like folded flowers, a crab that moves with careful intention, and a film of light that refracts across the surface in sugar-slow patterns. The pool is not a stage of spectacle, but a small domestic theater. We watch without demanding climax, noticing how a single curled shell catches a sun-sleeping sliver and holds it like a thought. Let us linger over a single shell's journey for a while. Picture, if you will, the shell abandoned at the high mark of a remembered shore, then nudged by a child's foot, then taken by a current, turned upon itself many times, finally settling, perhaps far from its first home. The narrative of the shell is long but gentle. Sand abrades it, sun warms it, water cools it, and over seasons lichen and barnacle add the soft architecture of time. Through this small object's arc, we can feel centuries as if they were a leisurely fold of fabric. We allow ourselves a digression about sound, the whisper of a reed, the slight squeak of a paddle, the breathy echo of a gull's wing. These are the environmental consonants that stitch our larger narrative. Imagine, too, a child singing an untranslatable fragment of a counting rhyme beside a river mouth. The syllables repeat and simplify, becoming almost a rhythm that the tide itself could keep. Repetition here is a remedial and sleepy instrument. Anaphora in sound becomes a lowering of the mind's guard. Consider a day in miniature where time compresses. Morning light like a safe coin, midday heat like folded linen, evening cool like the underside of a leaf. We imagine people measuring time by small things: a boat's net, the arc of a swan's wing, the sound of a bell at a distant reef. And these small measures soften our thinking into patterns that do not require resolution. The mind, lulled into rhythm, begins to unfasten. Now picture a river's patient incision in cross-section, layers of silt, slow and even, a fallen tree trunk held in anoxic mud, its bark preserved like an old ledger. Think of the way leaves stack and become part of the ground's memory, so that the earth itself is a slow, polite store of days. Each leaf is unreadable alone, but when gathered becomes a ledger that scientists and poets can both touch with reverence. We do not demand that meaning be immediate. Instead, we relish the labor of gradual knowledge. There are imaginal inventories we allow ourselves here. A child's carved peg smoothed by a thumb, a fisherman's knot that contains a history of weather, a stone that reads like a palm smoothed by hands over years. These are not artifacts displayed for their rarity, but for their ordinary persistence. In this mode, rarity is less important than continuity. Small things that reappear across time, tiny repeats that are like soft stitches in a long garment. The repetition of detail becomes a soporific device. It is the sameness of smallness that soothes. We introduce a playful, slow metaphor. If the continent were a book, its margins would be dog-eared by tides. If a village were a sentence, its commas would be the boats, and its full stops the hearths. Such metaphors are quiet companions. They do not instruct so much as orient. They flatten the need for technical precision and invite a more leisurely comprehension, one that is content with imagery and with the comfort of analogies. Sleep-friendly digression includes imagining the simple choreography of daily tasks that require minimal decision-making. Mending a net, scraping seaweed from a rock, noticing the way light sits differently on a wet surface. These tasks unfold like soft exercises of attention. They are manual and immediate, and therefore wonderfully restful. As we picture hands at work, the mind can rest from abstract problem-solving and enter into the slow, precise world of texture and timing. We invite you to bring attention to small bodily cues now. Let the jaw unclench a little, let the tongue flatten, and notice a gentle slackening behind the eyes. Such bodily softening is a companion to the narrative's digressions. Both are intended to ease cognitive tension. These micro-practices are not commands, but invitations, phrased with the light touch of a companion who knows the route. Our digressions sometimes fold into dreamy lists, a catalog of modest things that could occupy a long evening without strain. The scent of wet earth after a warm rain, the soft rasp of a woven basket, the measured drip from a reed-harvested pot. We recite such lists not to inform, but to allow the mind to select one small image and hold it, turning it over like a familiar coin until the edges are known. There is also value in small, repetitive gestures within the stories. A child counts shells in the same pattern each day. An elder hums a tune that always returns to the same phrase. The tide kisses a particular rock at almost the same minute each afternoon. These repetitions create a temporal lullaby, a predictable architecture in which the listener can relax. Patterns reduce uncertainty. Reduced uncertainty quiets thought. And finally, we allow a longer, lazy drift to close this section. A slow mapping of clouds reflected in a lagoon, a mosquito's patient, barely audible wing, the soft licking of foam along a low bank. Each image is placed with exactly the same care and then released. We do not tie a knot of revelation here. We leave the circle open-ended so that the mind may wander into sleep with gentle permission. Let these small images serve as a vestibule where the mind lays down its small implements. Breath lengthens imperceptibly, muscles relax a measure, and the last bright edge of thought softens into a comfortable shadow that we share, that we keep, and then quietly release. Emotional undercurrents, melancholy, wonder, and companionship. We lean now into feeling with the same careful hand that we used for facts, because emotion here is not an interruption, but an archive, soft, layered, and readable if handled with patience. There is a low, pervasive melancholy that accompanies the idea of a land folded into the sea, but it is a melancholy that has room inside it for wonder. We name it aloud so it ceases to sharpen, wistfulness for what has been smooth, gratitude for what endures, and a tender curiosity for the ways memory wears into matter. This trio is not melodrama. It is a companion's steady keeping. We remember together the small and large things, and that shared memory is itself consoling. Imagine a cello note under the speech, long and rounded, that colors the narration like dusk coloring a hemisphere. Small bright sounds, one tap of a shell, a distant bell, appear infrequently so that the overall tonality remains gentle rather than excited. The sound world supports feeling, it does not lead it. In this way, scholarship becomes solace. The act of careful description soothes because it makes the world legible and thereby finite, no longer threatening in its unreadability. We attend to the quiet grief that isn't urgent but is continuous, like a slow tide. This grief is not demanded of us, it is offered. We may accept it in small measures, allowing a soft pause after a recalled detail, letting the voice descend to its low center for a moment, so that the emotion is witnessed and then permitted to float away. Such witnessing is part of our shared ritual. It is how we honor what is lost without being overwhelmed by it. There are specific gestures that make this feeling intimate and human. A small, repeated tactile motif, sand running through a cupped hand, can stand in for generations. The motif is a way to translate scale into touch, and thus to make it bearable. Another motif is the rhythm of a counting rhyme that keeps changing as children learn new coastlines. This small domestic change makes historical magnitude approachable. These repeated images let us inhabit large time in manageable increments. We also make room for quiet gratitude, for preserved fragments, for patient hands that record, for the way a thumbprint on clay can connect us across time. This gratitude is not triumphal, it is humble and, in its humility, restorative. Science, we remind ourselves, is often a series of careful leaning in moments. The reading of a core, the unrolling of a map, the slow cleaning of an object. Each act is a small kindness toward the past. We place a gentle scholar's phrase here. One might suppose that naming grief makes it manageable, and this is true in the soft way of a learned observation. The reader will perhaps imagine family lines changing their routes, markets shifting from one bay to another, songs lengthening to remember older shores. These imaginings are not speculation for drama, but a way of keeping company with the past. Now, bring attention to the body in two small ways. Feel the weight of your palms on your thighs, and notice the small widening at the base of the ribcage as your breath finds its natural length. These are small, grounding anchors. Let them steady you as the story continues. Our voice is companionable and warm. It holds a respectful distance that lets memory be both private and communal. We choose language that reduces startle and increases intimacy. Soft consonants, long vowels, and ellipses of pause that act like cushions. The mood we hold is deliberately undramatic because sleep requires the removal of jagged surprises. There is also a reciprocal quality to wonder. As we trace the shapes of the drowned shelf, we discover that awe is not a sudden blaze but a slow illumination. For example, the quiet astonishment at finding a tool in a place where water now becomes, over time, an ongoing reverence for the persistence of human matter. Our wonder is an echo of the maker's small choices, and in that echo we find companionship. There are quiet communal rituals that multiply this solace. A neighbor bringing boiled fish to a family moving a hearth, an elder humming a shore song the children count, people placing a small stone where the tide once lapped. These modest acts stitch private sorrow into a shared pattern, lightly, and they become a small, portable consolation we carry inland with our breath. We end this reflection with a soft, shared assurance that memory, like sediment, accumulates patiently, and that in the slow accretion there is a kind of comfort. We remember together, we keep together, and in the keeping there is a gentle readiness to rest. Deep archaeological echoes, tools, cores, and the language of sediment. We make the technical tangible by listening close. Imagine a distant core drill's patient thrum as a soft, steady heartbeat beneath our conversation, and the scratch of a brush across bone rendered as a whispering rhythm that punctuates the quiet. These are the small percussive textures that allow the past to be read as if it were music. Fieldwork begins in movements both large and very small. A research vessel stations itself like a patient animal, winch lowering instruments as if nudging sleep toward a very old dream. There is the thump of sampling gears striking a mud line, the dull, flat sound of a sediment core emerging wrapped in its liner, and the faintly sweet smell of trapped peat released into the air. Cores are long sentences of earth, dark bands of organic matter, pale lines of sand, a sudden shimmer of shell fragment, and in their layering we read a slow punctuation of environments, carefully, line by careful line, as though unrolling a slow, tactile scroll. The language of sediment is both literal and metaphorical. Pollen grains whisper of once dense forests. A sudden change to salt-tolerant species marks a transition to estuary or sea. Microfossils, tiny foraminifera, arrive like new voices in the chorus, announcing a marine presence. Isotope ratios are the quieter notations, subtle shifts in oxygen that hint at temperature and salinity. These are readings that require patient calibration and a gentle hand. Interpretation is not a quick exercise. It is a prolonged conversation with matter that resists haste. Archaeologists listen with tools as much as with eyes. The tactile economy in an excavation is minute. Trowels that lay down centimeters with ceremony, brushes like tiny sails, sieves that turn soil into its grainy story. Imagine the soft sigh of a sieve, the small percussion of gravel falling into a tray. Each sound marks the revelation of an object left intimate in the earth. A flake of stone worked to hold food, a bead with a worn hole, a post hole's dark crescent that suggests a former upright timber. The noises are modest, domestic even, and they carry the hum of ordinary human lives. Conservation brings another set of textures, foam cradles, pH baths humming softly, and the precise scrape of a scalpel easing incrustation from a fragile surface. In the lab, a conservator's attention makes noise in tiny measures. A brush passes like a distant wind, a clamp breathes closed, the slow click of a microscope's focus knob. These are the noises of careful rescue, where time is respected and objects are treated with a tenderness often mistaken for ritual. We must include the scholarly caveats because the sediment does not speak plainly. Context is vital. A shard found within a disturbed layer says something different from the same shard found in an intact hearth. Radiocarbon dates have margins, ranges that must be read aloud with the humility of uncertainty. One sample may suggest a range of centuries, another may contradict it. Thus, we assemble multiple lines of evidence, cores, dates, artifact typology, and oral records, to triangulate a past that is coherent and richly provisional, the sort of partial answer that together form a generous portrait. Let us whisper a few softly named findings, tenderly and without fanfare. Consider a preserved wood fragment, its rings still legible, telling us of years of slow growth and years of drought. Consider a sequence of pollen that shows a woodland giving way to reeds. Consider a scatter of tiny beads that may indicate trade or may simply be the remnants of a child's necklace. Each finding is a small insistence that human life was present and ordinary, and each is treated in the field as a confidential testimony rather than a spectacle. We make room for technique because technique is narrative. A bathymetric map turns contours into a language of their own. The terraces that appear like steps are read as former literal benches. Acoustic profiling reveals buried channels like faint handwriting in the seabed. The instruments are not infallible. Sonar can be confounded by gas pockets or modern debris. Cores can be compressed or disturbed, and samples can be contaminated. But even with such limitations, careful cross-checking and methodical layering of independent measures build a kind of confidence that arrives in whispers rather than shouts. There is a ritual of measurement in this work that is almost meditative. The calibration of an instrument, the repeating of an assay, the patient recounting of samples. All of these acts slow the human worker into a rhythm that matches the narratives they read. We find modest comfort in this repetition. It aligns researchers' bodies with the slow tempo of geologic and human change. Feel your own body match that tempo. If you will, notice the steadiness of your heartbeat. Let the shoulders loosen further and allow the chest to settle into long, even breaths. We also attend to the ethics of excavation. Disturbance is an act with consequences. Retrieving a fragile object from stable context can be both preservation and intervention. Conservators and communities debate such choices gently, often over tea, with measured voices. Local knowledge is consulted, stories weighed alongside laboratory curves, and permission is sought because the past belongs to many present hands. This procedural care is of a piece with the quietness of the enterprise. A final quiet marvel. Sometimes layers preserve not only artifacts but faint imprints of behavior. Tracks in former marshes that translate to footfall. The smudge of a hearth that implies a circle of bodies. Such traces require deft interpretation, and when found they are handled with a particular tenderness, photographed, described, and reburied if need be to preserve them from erosion. The act of reburial is itself a respectful pause, an acknowledgement that some things are safer in the earth's keeping for a time. In listening to these small sounds, we practice humility. Each measurement returns us to patient observation, and every modest artifact is a quiet interlocutor. We learn to read depth as memory and to honor the sediment's slow, articulate testimony. Let us close this section with a calm image. A core stood upright on a lab bench, its bands of color like an old, patient barcode, a tiny brush moving in a slow arc, a small bead cupped in two hands. These images are modest but potent. They show method married to reverence, and they allow us to hear the past not as a loud proclamation, but as a chorus of small clarities that accumulate into meaning. Folklore and cultural echoes across coasts, songs the sea keeps. Along these retreating shores, sound becomes a vessel for memory. Beneath our voice we can almost hear it, a faint melodic motif, hummed rather than sung, carried on a warm evening breeze that smells of salt and flowering mangrove. It is not a full song, only a contour of one, notes rising and falling like a shoreline remembered in sleep. The sea, after all, has always been a keeper of songs. We move gently here, because folklore is not evidence in the way sediment is, and yet it is not nothing. It is a soft archive, held in breath and repetition. Across the coasts of Southeast Asia, one finds stories of lands that once stretched farther, of villages claimed not by anger but by patience, of seas that advanced as though invited. We do not claim these tales as proof. We sit with them as echoes, reverberations that may align, in spirit, with a long and careful inundation. Imagine how songs might change as the shoreline retreats. Verses lengthen to account for longer journeys to the water. Refrains repeat more often, to steady memory as landmarks vanish. A fishing song once mapped to a familiar inlet now needs an added line to reach the new tide's edge. We can almost hear the adjustment, a pause inserted, a note held longer, a breath taken where land used to be. These are adaptations so subtle they rarely announce themselves. Yet over generations they reshape the soundscape of daily life. Flood stories appear again and again, not as calamity alone, but as instruction. The sea is addressed politely, sometimes maternally. Offerings are made not in fear, but in acknowledgement. We hear of boats guided by stars and sung directions, of coastlines remembered through rhyme when paths are no longer visible. Such songs function as tools, mnemonics that store geography in melody. And when geography shifts, the melody shifts with it, pliant and resilient. We are careful to remain respectful here. We do not assign a single origin to any one myth, nor do we draw straight lines between a drowned shelf and a living tradition. Instead, we allow ourselves a shared imagining. We can hear a song like this in our mind, one that holds a home by the water and a promise of return, even if return is only through sound. This imagining is companionable rather than assertive, a way of listening rather than declaring. There is comfort in repetition. Many of these stories circle familiar themes: homes near water, gifts given to the sea, journeys taken at dusk. The repetition itself is soothing, like a lullaby repeated night after night until its words blur and only the rhythm remains. In this way, folklore behaves much like tide and breath, steady, cyclical, reassuring in its predictability. Sometimes the echoes are not words at all, but practices. A pause before launching a boat, a particular knot tied and retied, a shell placed near a doorway. Each small act carries sound with it, the soft scrape of fiber, the tap of shell on wood, and each sound participates in the story. These micro-rituals accumulate, century by century, into a cultural cadence that survives even as the land beneath it changes. We listen, too, for silence. When a song falls out of use because the place it names no longer exists, that absence leaves a hollow note. Yet silence can be instructive. It tells us that memory adapts not only by adding, but by letting go. What remains is often what can travel: rhythm, refrain, a simple melodic curve that fits easily into the body and can be carried inland when the coast recedes. Let your own breathing match that curve now. Inhale slowly as a phrase rises. Exhale as it falls, not striving to remember exact words, only the feeling of being held by repetition. The sea keeps these songs not as recordings, but as impressions, pressed gently into culture and carried forward by those who hum without knowing why. We end this listening not with a conclusion, but with a shared hush. Picture a shoreline at twilight, someone standing ankle-deep in warm water, humming a tune with no beginning and no end. The melody drifts outward, thins, and is taken up by the water itself. What is kept is not the lyric, but the calm it brings, and that calm returns to us now, settling softly around the shoulders, easing the jaw, inviting the mind to rest. Submerged ecology and oceanic memory, reefs, rains, and reef-zone cities. Beneath the surface, life does not end, it changes its grammar. If we listen carefully, we can almost hear it, the intricate murmur of reefs, not loud enough to demand attention, but complex enough to reward patience. Tiny clicks and soft pops overlap like a careful conversation held just out of reach, while a broader hush cradles them all. It is the sound of adaptation, steady and untroubled. As the low plains of Sundaland slipped under the rising sea, new communities assembled themselves with quiet purpose. Mangroves found purchase where riverbanks once breathed air, their roots stitching water to land in a patient, lace-like architecture. Coral larvae settled on exposed stone, turning ridges and former pathways into the scaffolding of reefs. What had been plain became threshold. What had been village became habitat. This was not erasure, but translation. Reefs grow by accretion, by the addition of countless small lives over long time. We imagine them as sleep-built houses, assembled at night by builders who never hurry. A fragment of coral lays down its calcium whisper by whisper, and over generations the structure thickens, becomes a shelter, then a city of sorts, rooms without walls, corridors traced by fish. The ocean floor learns a new topography, one written in living stone. There is memory here, too. Anoxic pockets preserve wooden posts and woven fibers where currents are gentle and oxygen scarce. Shell layers record seasons of abundance. Fish bones accumulate in patterns that suggest repeated visits. Even bioturbation, the restless work of worms and burrowers, tells a story, mixing layers in a slow, thoughtful shuffle that speaks of continuity rather than disruption. Each process leaves a mark, subtle but legible to those who listen. Rain returns as a distant participant. Freshwater lenses hover above salt, carrying the taste of land into the sea. Nutrients flow outward, feeding plankton blooms that shimmer faintly in low light. The rhythm is cyclical, monsoon after monsoon, tide after tide, life adjusting its breathing to a new cadence. We feel comfort in this regularity. It mirrors our own slow inhale and release, the chest rising and falling without effort. We resist the language of catastrophe here. The transformations we describe are patient, even kind. Where forests once stood, seagrass meadows sway. Where hearths cooled, reef fish now shelter. The sea does not rush, it arranges. It remembers by reusing, by building gently atop what came before. Loss is present, yes, but it is softened by succession. Let us rest with that thought. Imagine lying back and sensing the cool weight of water above a reef, the light dimming to a calm blue-green. The reef continues its quiet work, click by click, breath by breath. Our own breathing slows in sympathy, shoulders easing, jaw unclenching. The idea of a reef-sown city, stitched together by time and patience, settles into us as reassurance rather than mystery. We leave this section knowing that memory is not only human. The ocean keeps its own records, written in coral and current, rain and root. And as we drift with that knowledge, the mind loosens its grip on effort, allowing thought to thin and float, like silt settling after a gentle tide. Reflective micro-stories, small lives on a sinking shore. We come in close now, narrowing the field of listening until the vastness resolves into intimacy. The sounds draw nearer, wood on wood, a soft footstep in damp sand, the hush of a voice meant for only one other person. In this closeness, the world feels held, and we can hear how small lives continue gently even as the shoreline shifts. First, an elder at dusk. We hear the careful scratch of charcoal against a smooth surface, perhaps bark or a flat stone, as stars are marked in relation to a horizon that no longer stays still. The elder pauses often, listening to the water, adjusting the map, not with frustration but with patience. A breath is taken, a line is redrawn. The map is not a declaration, it is a conversation with the night sky, updated as needed. We sense the calm authority of experience, the knowledge that change is not an interruption, only a condition. Next, a fisher by morning light. The sound here is fiber and focus. The faint creak of a net being stretched, the whisper of a knot tightened and tested. Tides have altered, channels have shifted, so the fisher adapts the weave, adding a loop, removing another. There is no hurry. The hands know what to do before the mind names it. When the net is lifted, it sighs softly, as if approving the adjustment. We feel the steadiness of routine, the comfort of craft that responds rather than resists. Then, a child at midday, close to the water's edge. The sound is playful and precise. A small toy rolling, a stick tapping rhythm into wet sand, a hum that trails off and begins again. The child learns the hours by light and tide, not by clock. This is the time when shadows shorten. This is when the water reaches the mangrove roots. A question is asked and answered with a gesture. Learning happens without urgency, curiosity held safely within repetition. Between these moments there are pauses, silences thick enough to notice. We hear the breath of the place itself, wind through grass, the low pulse of surf, insects threading the air with a steady tone. These micro-stories do not build toward drama. They settle into continuity. Lives are lived fully in small gestures, and the slow retreat of land is met with adjustment rather than alarm. We avoid names and dates because universality lives in the unnamed. Any one of us could step into these moments, could feel the texture of the tasks and the reassurance they offer. The intimacy invites identification without demand. Notice how your shoulders soften as you listen, how the jaw loosens when the stakes remain gentle. This is the comfort of ordinary competence, shared quietly. Each vignette trails into a hush, as if the sound itself is ready to rest. The elder sets the charcoal down. The fisher folds the net. The child's tapping slows, then stops. In their place remains a calm presence, the sense that continuity does not require permanence. It requires attention, care, and the willingness to learn again tomorrow. We let these small lives echo together, overlapping softly like voices in a familiar room. The echoes do not compete, they harmonize. And as they do, our own breathing finds their tempo, slow, even unforced. The mind need not hold on to detail now. It can simply float on the feeling of steadiness these moments provide. Quiet resolution, acceptance as a soft tide. The soundscape thins now, as if the world itself were drawing a gentle curtain. What remains is a single, low sustaining tone, and beneath it the soft, patient whisper of sea against itself. Our voice comes closer, quieter, like a book being eased shut with care. There is a moment, when we step back from the long view, where acceptance arrives not as an idea, but as a feeling. The land we have walked together does not ask to be restored, only to be remembered with kindness. Its slow vanishing belongs to a larger order, one measured in strata and seasons, not an alarm. We feel this order as steadiness, as something that holds rather than takes away. Geology teaches patience. The rise of the sea was not a single gesture, but a series of breaths taken over millennia. Each advance paused, listened, and continued. Human lives adjusted in parallel, learning new edges, new rhythms. When we allow these timelines to overlap in our minds, urgency loosens its grip. What endures is not a coastline, but a continuity of care. Our knowledge, too, is patient. We know only in fragments. Cores lifted carefully, songs carried softly, tools recovered and returned. Yet these fragments are enough to form a gentle coherence. They remind us that certainty is not required for meaning. Partial understanding can still be rich, can still comfort. We rest in that humility, finding it oddly reassuring. What remains matters. Sediment holds pollen and memory. Stories hold shape and rhythm. The living sea holds everything else, rearranged but present. Nothing is truly gone, only transformed, folded into another form that continues its quiet work. This thought settles like a warm weight across the chest, easing the breath. Let us pause here together. Notice how the shoulders sink a little deeper, how the space behind the eyes softens. There is no need to carry the story forward now. It has carried us far enough. The tide we feel is steady, familiar, and kind. We close without ceremony. No final revelation waits beyond this point. Only the calm dignity of what has been, and the assurance that patience is a kind of peace. Our voice fades back into the hush it came from, leaving the sea to whisper its own long sentences, and leaving us held safely within them. Soft drift into sleep, lullaby for a sunken continent. The last sounds gather themselves gently, as if preparing to rest. Space opens wide around us. A warm reverberation lingers, like a shell held close to the ear, carrying not noise, but memory. Somewhere far below, a slow, whale-like sigh rises and fades, not as a call, but as an exhale shared with the sea. We offer no new paths now. The continent we have followed no longer needs explanation. It rests where it has always rested, beneath a patient surface, folded into the larger body of the ocean. We imagine it there, not lost, not striving, simply lying at ease, like an old friend tucked under familiar blankets. The sea covers it lightly, knowing its shape by heart. Thoughts soften. The edges of images blur. What remains is sensation without effort, the sense of depth, of being held from all sides by something calm and vast. We drift with that feeling, neither sinking nor floating, just settling into a comfortable middle where nothing is required of us. Breath finds its own rhythm. We do not instruct it, we notice it. In and out, slow, even untroubled. The tide outside and the tide within begin to resemble one another, moving with the same unhurried patience. Muscles release their small negotiations. The body remembers how to rest. We stay with a single image now, the sunken land at night. No light reaches it directly, yet it is not dark in the way of fear. It is dark like deep water, like closed eyes. Shapes are known without being seen. The seabed cradles old rivers, old paths, old homes, all quiet and complete in themselves. Deeper now, quieter now. Deeper now, quieter now. The sea keeps watch, but it does not wake what is resting. Currents move carefully overhead. Fish pass like passing thoughts, brief and unimportant. Nothing asks for attention. Nothing interrupts. We feel the mind begin to loosen its grip, releasing the need to follow, to remember, to anticipate. Words thin out. Meaning remains, but it no longer needs structure. It becomes a feeling, soft, wide, and slow. We rest now. We rest now. Each repetition smooths the surface a little more. Each pause widens the space between thoughts. Silence grows friendly. It does not rush to fill itself. Deeper now. Quieter now. We rest now. The phrases repeat like a lullaby without melody, their familiarity more important than their sense. They arrive. They fade. They return, slower each time. The sea breathes. We breathe. The distinction matters less and less. There is nothing more to hold. The story has already set you down gently where you can sleep. The continent sleeps. The water sleeps. We sleep too, carried on a calm that does not end, only deepens.